You're entering the vicinity of an area adjacent to a location. The kind of place where there might be a monster or some kind of weird mirror. These are just examples. It could also be something much better. Prepare to enter the scary door.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
That's not fair. That's not fair at all. There was time now.
It's not fair.
Wait, my eyes aren't that bad. I can still read the large print books.
Ah, it's not.
Well, lucky I know how to read Braille.
Oh!
Hey, look at that weird mirror.
This is Denny Spangler, and you are listening to that Twilighty's show about that zone. Tonight we are discussing The Lonely and Time Enough at Last.
All right. In 2046, an inmate named Corey is sentenced to solitary confinement on a distant asteroid for 50 years. In his fourth year of confinement, he's visited by a spacecraft that regularly brings him supplies and news from Earth 4 times a year. The ship and crew can stay for only a few minutes each visit, so the asteroid's orbit and the ship's fuel consumption rate make longer visits impossible. Captain Allenby has been trying to make Corey stay humanly tolerable by bringing him things to take his mind off the loneliness. On this trip, on the 15th day of the 6th month of the 4th year, however, Allenby tells Corey not to open a certain crate that he has just delivered until after they leave. Upon opening this special container, Corey discovers that Allenby has left him a feminine robot named Alicia to keep him company. At first, Corey detests it, rejecting Alicia as a mere machine, synthetic skin, wires inside. However, when Corey sees that Alicia is in fact capable of crying, he begins to fall in love with it. Now, a little background first. The Lonely was written by Rod Serling, directed by Jack Smite. The episode originally premiered November 13th, 1959. Jack Smite is most famous for having directed the 1977 science fiction blockbuster Damnation Alley, starring George Peppard and Jan Michael Vincent, and which Andrew and I reviewed on Blissful Fridays last May. Damnation Alley had the misfortune of being released by Fox at the same time as Star Wars, and also of having a much larger budget. Rod Serling, as a writer, tends to be unimaginably cruel to his protagonists, doesn't he? Consider this episode and the one that follows, Time Enough at Last. Did you ever see Damnation Alley?
No, I have not.
It is a fun movie. It has giant killer cockroaches. I love
I'm in.
But it's a great movie. It's a nice kind of like B movie kind of a thing.
I've heard of it before, but I did not know that it had a Twilight Zone connection to it.
Just through Jack Smite, but
yeah,
really quite. I mean, he's a great director. It's very schlocky. It's just a very schlocky movie. It's not anything like this. This is obviously more intellectualizing.
I'm in for the schlock.
Yeah. Schlock is good. You would really enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's about the end of the world, and this group of ragtag survivors have to go across the country to find survivors of the nuclear war, and they wind up in Buffalo. I don't know. Was it Buffalo? No, it was Albany. I'm sorry. It was Albany, New York. Apparently there are survivors in Albany.
I'm in.
So this appears to be a future where there is no crime, or at least nothing beyond the occasional little white lie. Jack Warden's character is a convicted murderer, as Serling states in the introduction. For 4 years, he's been trying to keep himself occupied. He's rebuilding an antique car that he's probably not going to drive anywhere. He plays chess, waits for the routine patrol and supply ships. He has nobody to talk to. So consider how much money people pay to be left alone these days, and we're left at that emotional impasse. He He protests his innocence. He didn't really kill that guy. It was self-defense or something along those lines. And everybody believes him. But they just, they don't really care, or their hands are tied. They can't really do anything about that.
Well, we've only got a 15-minute layover this time, Corey.
Oh, look, no one's checking on your schedule way out here. We can play a couple of games of cards or something, huh?
I'm sorry, Corey. If we delay our time of departure any longer than 15 minutes, it just places us in a different orbital position. We never make it back to Earth. No, we'd have to stay here at least 14 days before this place would be in position again.
Oh, 14 days? Hey, look, I got some beer saved. We could play some cards.
Yeah, I know. I wish we could, Corey, but like I said, we've only got 15 minutes.
Well, what's a few minutes? I mean, hey, look, we could play some chess. I built a chess set and everything.
Let's go in.
Allenby, only 2 minutes are gone. 2 minutes have passed already. We've only got 13 left. Now, look, I don't want to foul up your schedule, but how about one game of cards, huh?
Listen, we just don't have the time.
Hey, we've been here 2 minutes already, and he hasn't asked about the pardon.
How about it, Allenby?
You're out of luck, Corey. The sentence reads 50 years. And they're not even reviewing cases of homicide. You've been here 4 years now, so that makes 46 more to go, so make yourself comfortable, huh?
Corey, we don't make the rules. All we do is deliver your supplies and pass on information. I told you last time there's been a lot of pressure back home about this kind of punishment. A lot of people who think it's unnecessarily cruel. They may change their minds, alter the law, and imprison you on Earth like the old days. But who knows what the next couple of years may bring.
But at least he has a friend, Allenby, who visits every few months. And, okay, everybody in this episode, did you notice this? They keep mispronouncing the word robot. They keep calling it robot.
Yep. I noticed that. I made a note of that.
It's like they sound like old Jewish men. It's a robot. What are you doing with that robot? Did you get me a robot? Yes, I got you a robot. But it's not really a robot. Technically, it's an android. A robot is like, what's a robot? Like the machine from Lost in Space. That's a robot. Danger, that kind of stuff. Now, an android is a robot that is made to resemble a human being. That's the crucial difference between the two.
What was the name of the antagonist in this episode again?
The antagonist,
Corey?
per se?
Yeah.
I don't know that there was,
The prisoner.
Well,
Corey. Corey?
Corey, yes. But the thing is, you call him an antagonist, and I don't really see him as an antagonist. I see him as a protagonist.
Well, yeah. I mean,
he's kind of victimized. He's in a situation, and he doesn't do anything to provoke another character. He is, his loneliness is what carries the episode. So I view him more as a protagonist.
Well, I kept thinking of the Simon & Garfunkel song, Richard Corey.
Richard Corey. Never heard of it.
Because his last name was Corey. Right. And, that's kind of like a nice vacation for me to not be around anyone.
For 4 years, though? And against your own will?
I could deal with it.
But against your own will, though, I think if someone's forcing you to do this, you will feel constricted. You will feel like it is a punishment. But if you want to do it yourself, absolutely, you might have a good time. It's a good place to meditate or whatever. You're on a planet really far away.
Yeah, exactly. He's basically sentenced to prison. Basically, it turns out to be with a Jenna Jameson blow-up doll.
Is that what you think she looks like? That?
Well, no, not really, but it's a good joke.
If she looked like Jenna Jameson, I would have destroyed that thing many times over, but that's just me. And I don't mean in a bad way. Well, I mean in a disgusting way.
Be careful.
Actually, she's not. She's good looking. This Alicia. Yeah. She's got kind of a. She seems awfully young. She seems troublingly young, but I guess it makes sense.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking that it was like a trap, that she was a trap, that she was going to capture his confessions and that sort of thing and make his sentence even worse. But No, it
that
was not
would have
that.
been interesting. That would have been a little too much story, I think, for the half-hour format.
Yeah, and that's another note I made too, that the episode flew by kind of quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a nice commentary on how the lonely will project emotions on inanimate objects.
Okay, yeah, this brings up a really interesting point that I was thinking about. It's reminiscent of later Android stories, like Blade Runner or AI, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
In that they place a question of morality in the narrative, that of our obligation to love our Android creations as much as we've programmed those creations to love us. Allenby leaves Corey a big box. Corey opens the box. He finds an android in the form of a woman, a relatively hot woman, and after a short time, he gets to like her. And they sort of leave it at that. But this is a pivotal question for you. Do you think that he had some kind of a sexual relationship with the girl?
I do not know. Possibly.
We have to assume that the girl is anatomically correct.
Yeah, because I mean, judging by what we've seen on the episode, she is anatomically correct on everything we've seen.
Right.
So why not everything from the waist down?
Yeah.
So actually, that's a very good point that I really did not consider.
You didn't consider that.
Not really. No,
that's the
not
first
really,
thing
no.
I considered. That's the first thing I considered. I was like, what does she look like underneath that tunic she's wearing?
It's very possible.
Plus, she
But
goes
then
out
again,
of her
too,
way to try and be nice to him.
Right, and that kind of ties in with my theory on, is she bleeding information from him? Is she trying to get more information than they already know?
Right, and he already seems suspicious of her anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of ties in with what I was thinking of, trying to get more information from him, but it doesn't really pan out that way.
Right. Loneliness, okay, seems to be a recurring theme in these early episodes. Like, Where Is Everybody, the episode we talked about before. This one, and Time Enough at Last, all take great pains to tell us about the horrors of being alone. And I wanted to make note that Jack Warden, who plays the character of Corey, is a fine actor. He would later appear in the Mighty Casey episode toward the end of this first season. Now, astronauts, okay. Now, this is probably the first instance that we hear them complain about their jobs, and they do it a lot on this show. Most episodes, if not all of them, that involve astronauts on the Twilight Zone are always bitching about how they hate to do what they're doing. And they always get on each other's nerves. I always thought that was interesting, too.
I noticed that, too. Actually, a couple of years ago when I first started watching the show, more subjectively, I suppose.
Now, I think I noticed it, like, the first time I think I ever noticed, because this goes before I started watching the Twilight Zone show. I saw this movie, Alien, directed by Ridley Scott, from 1979. And if you notice in that movie, everyone gets on each other's nerves so much.
Oh, my God, yes. Yes.
She's a woman.
Corey, she's a robot.
She's a woman. She's gentle and kind. Allenby, she kept me alive. Why, if it wasn't for her, I'd have been finished. I'd have given up.
So that's what you wouldn't let us look at, huh? The big crate. We can't let this be a problem now, Corey.
Problem? There's no more problems. There's no more problems on heaven or earth. We'll just climb in that ship of yours, and when we hit that big, beautiful green earth...
15 pounds.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. You'll have to throw out some equipment. Alicia, she weighs more than 15 pounds.
That's exactly the point now, Corey. Our ship is stripped right now. We only have enough room for you and that ledger and that pencil of yours. Now, you're going to have to leave that robot behind.
She's not a robot. She's a woman. You don't understand. You leave her behind, that's murder.
Corey, now, wait a minute. I haven't got any choice. Don't you understand?
No, you don't understand. She's not a robot. She's a woman.
Now, of note here, one of Allenby's crew is played by none other than Ted Knight from the Mary Tyler Moore Show and the movie Caddyshack.
Well, we're waiting.
In case you miss him, he's the jackass who keeps trading barbs with Warden's character because I guess he doesn't like these long journeys. But nobody put a gun to his head and told him to be an astronaut.
That we know of.
Now, you see Ted Knight, if you noticed him, he doesn't exactly go, "Oh, Lou, what are you doing, Lou? You got to give me a chance, Lou." But you can also catch a young Ted Knight at the end of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho the very next year. He's the deputy at the end of the movie who gives Norman a blanket right before the end credits.
Yeah.
Now, John Daner plays Allenby. He's also guilty of saying the word robots all the time. But he also appears in the third season episode, The Jungle, and the fifth season episode, Mr. Garrity and the Graves. Jean Marsh plays the android girl, Alicia. I don't really have that much information about her until later on because she winds up being a recurring character on the old Doctor Who show. She plays Sarah Kingdom during the show's run in the 70s, and she was married to John Pertwee, who was the third Doctor. She's also an accomplished writer, and she has published several books.
I did not know that. I didn't know that her career basically extended beyond this episode.
The radio adaptation of it stars Mike Starr, and Mike Starr makes more than a few appearances on the radio show.
Yeah.
Typically in the movies, he plays big tough guys in feature films, usually mobbed up types. He was featured prominently in a personal favorite film of mine from 1993 called Mad Dog and Glory, starring Robert De Niro, Uma Thurman, and Bill Murray. It's a great movie. I love it. It's just a wonderful movie.
I've heard of it. I have not seen it, though.
I have it on Laserdisc.
Yay!
Great movie. Now, okay, when we mention again for this episode, Denny, you have been looking at these Twilight Zone episodes on Laserdisc. I have been looking at them on, basically, I have DVD rips. What I'm going to be doing, Amazon, thankfully, has every Twilight Zone episode in HD. So what I'm going to be doing next year, I think, is working up a collection of HD episodes that I'm going to download from Amazon. And I want to compare them because I want to see how they look.
I've only seen 2 of the 4 episodes tonight on Laserdisc.
Right.
The pilot and The Lonely. The Lonely was on the first box set.
Right. Yeah, this series that you have is called Creative Visions, right? And they're basically exemplar episodes, right? It's just a collection of certain episodes. It's not the complete set, right?
Not by far. No, there's only 15 episodes per box set.
And the complete set is like how many discs? Or how many
3.
boxes? Well, it's 3. So
3.
So it's 45 episodes.
Yeah.
All of them, I guess, picked for being representative of the show, right?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. And what other episodes were on that particular disc?
Yeah, The Lonely, and what was the pilot episode again?
Where Is Everybody?
Yes, that was on box set number 3. Believe it or not, that was on box set 3, whereas The Lonely was on the first box set.
Oh,
I think they kind of went by which episodes were most popular for each box set. Like for example, the first box was the most popular episode. Second was second popular. Third box set was the tertiary most popular episodes.
Right. What I see here, you sent me a picture. I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
On that set, you have Walking Distance, and you have The Lonely. You have Mirror Image, I love that one. That is like one of my favorite episodes. Long Live Walter Jameson, which is the one I did with my father-in-law recently. The Eye of the Beholder, again, another really famous episode.
Love that episode.
Nick of Time, that's the one with William Shatner.
Yep.
The Rip Van Winkle caper, which is, again, kind of another sick joke. And Silence, which is also a sick joke, I should say. But, yeah, those on those sets, you have like a mix. So they're not going in chronological order. They're only going in order of, I guess, importance or possible theme. Something along those lines. Okay, let's move on. Let me see. There's one last thing here. I think I was. Oh no, that's it. Okay, so let's move on. Our next episode is Time Enough at Last, which is considered, and deservedly so, one of the most famous of all Twilight Zone episodes, and stars Burgess Meredith as our four-eyed protagonist. He is a protagonist this time. Henry Bemis.
Yes.
It was written by Serling from a story by Lynn Venable and directed by John Bram. The episode premiered November 20th, 1959. I was surprised, frankly, reading various comments off the interwebs about how divisive this episode is. I know we look at it as an instant classic, and it's one of the more identifiable of the Twilight Zone episodes, but several parties were offended by it. I wanted to bring up a comment that Craig Beam wrote. Craig Beam he has an excellent website called My Life in the Shadow of the Twilight Zone. He also has a sister site about his insights into the Outer Limits and shows of that kind. He is starting a podcast as well about the Twilight Zone. I know nothing about it. All I know is when I made my announcement that I was starting a Twilight Zone podcast, he said basically, it's on. I'm starting my own podcast. So I was like, he was one of the people I originally wanted to contact to talk about Twilight Zone episodes.
Yeah.
I think he will participate at some point in the future. First, he writes, the characters, I don't give a damn about any of them. We're supposed to sympathize with the Burgess Meredith character, but for the life of me, I can't figure out why. Here's a guy who is so obsessive about reading that he's blind to everything else around him. He hides a copy of David Copperfield on his lap and reads from it while counting money out to a customer. He's a bank teller. Shortchanges her, then drones on about his book without noticing that she's walked away. Christ, man, snap out of it and do your job. It's hard to get too upset with his boss for chewing him out. I'd be chewing him out too. And okay, we can all agree that the wife is an uber bitch, so maybe on that front it's impossible not to sympathize with him a bit. But hell, he married her, didn't he? If he's not going to stand up to her, then he gets what he gets. That's, there's definitely a lack of sympathy there.
1, 2, 3, 4. Mrs. Chester, have you ever read David Copperfield?
How's that?
It's a wonderful book. It's this poor little fellow, his father has passed away, and his mother's married this miserable man called Murdstone. Isn't that a villainous name? Murdstone. Well, this Murdstone has a sister called Jane.
Mr. Bemis, you've shortchanged me again. You owe me $1 more. See? There's only 24 here, and there should be 25.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry, Mrs. Chester. I thought there were 5 ones. It was only 4. I thought I'd given you 5. I'm terribly sorry. And then there's another very funny character here called Micawber, Mr. Micawber. And he's always being sent to debtor's prison. And then there's another wonderful character here called Peggotty. That is David's nurse.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely understand his opinions. It's a bit extreme, though. I mean,
I really like Burgess Meredith a lot. I like him. I think he's a wonderful actor, and I think the character he plays, he's kind of a romantic character, except he lives inside his words. That's the kind of person he is.
One note that I made was his wife was a pervert's argument for divorce.
Oh, Lord.
I mean, she's a bitch on wheels. I mean, you don't really, you see her for like a total of maybe 2-3 minutes, and she's a total bitch.
And she has created such an incredible monster in those 3 minutes.
Exactly. I mean, and it's kind of reflected on him. Well, you can kind of assume. I mean, you can kind of agree with his opinion over his opinion of money over intellect.
Right.
A book of modern poetry. Yours, Henry? Would you like to read me some?
We'll read you some. Do you mean read you out loud out of the book?
Do you want to?
Oh, I would love to. No, there are some lovely things in here. There are 1 or 2 things from T.S. Eliot and Edison, Vincent Millay, Robert Frost, Carl Sandburg. Helen. Who did this, Helen?
Who do you think did it, Henry? You should thank me, really. A grown man who reads silly, ridiculous, nonsensical doggerel.
This isn't doggerel. There's some very beautiful things here.
I say it's doggerel. I also say it's a waste of time.
Helen, don't do that for Helen. Please don't do that. Why, Helen? Why do you do these things?
Because I'm married to a fool.
What disturbs me is this cruelty that Rod Serling unleashes upon this character. It's similar to what Corey has to experience in the previous episode, right?
Yep.
At the end of that episode, John Boehner comes right over, just shoots this robot right in the face and tells him to forget it. Forget her. You know, and he's like, oh, okay. It's just horrible. So for me, Burgess Meredith in this episode is a tragic character, and he's trapped in a modern world that has no time for the joys of reading.
Yep.
And can you imagine the sheer sadism of his wife? The psychotic, obsessive mind of a person would scribble out an entire book, page by page, crossing everything out so he can't read it.
Mm-hmm.
His wife actually believes that sitting around, gabbing, and bullshitting away with friends and neighbors and social x-rays is somehow more sophisticated than sitting in a chair quietly reading.
One note that I made was his subconscious opinion seems to be, I don't need people.
Right.
But it turns out he does.
Yeah.
If only to repair his glasses.
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
Well, yeah. And he's also talking about how he's going to be alone. And he even contemplates killing himself.
Yeah.
Now, early on, his boss calls him a reader, as though he were like using a racial epithet.
Yep.
Henry can't seem to command respect, mostly because it seems he keeps to himself and he doesn't make waves. He's happy with a book or a newspaper or a magazine or a brochure or even reading buttons. And the world won't stand for that. So his desires are kind of the opposite of Jack Warden's Corey, because instead of lamenting his loneliness, Bemis celebrates after he sees the library and the books that have survived. That doesn't change the fact that he was about to kill himself moments before.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, watching the episode, it kind of reminded me of when I was, doing hair, when I was a hair fag years ago.
Wait, you'll have to elaborate on that.
Well, because, between clients, I would read books. Okay. And my coworkers would look at me like I was like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you reading that book when that could be used to sweep up dust? Yeah. I can understand. I completely understand. I can relate with that character.
Well, people seem extremely uninterested in books in 1959. Not only that, but like openly hostile.
Yeah,
to Bemis
exactly.
When he tries to describe stories in the books he reads. I love books myself. Reading takes you to, I don't want to sound like, LeVar Burton or anything, but reading takes you to far more interesting places than any television or computer can take you. And I read constantly. When we lived upstate and I had to make the trip, it's like an hour, maybe even longer between the city and Brewster where we lived. I always had a book with me. So I read millions of books, and they don't, and I had a lot of books. The batteries don't die. You turn the pages, you can read even in low light, You're not connected to anything when you're reading a physical book in your hand. You're not connected to anything. You're completely on your own. So everybody hates this guy, his boss, his wife. And he's not unlikable. At the most, I think the worst you can say about him, regardless of Craig's observation, I would just say he's absent-minded. And I know a lot of people I'm absent-minded myself. Maybe his boss should marry his wife. That's what I wrote. Because his boss seems to really be turned on to the idea of a woman hating him for reading. Why is his wife so horrible? Every word out of her mouth is laced with such bitterness and hatred, even when she asks if he wants more coffee. She gloats like a sociopath when he discovers she's destroyed one of his books. It's just... So, I wonder... This is a good question for you. I wonder if the episode, while steeped in the central irony of Bemis losing his glasses, isn't a comment about a burgeoning subliterate society. Serling...
Yep.
Is Serling making a comment about people that we are moving away from an intellectual society of readers and going into just something else.
That is exactly one of the notes I made of is an anti-intellectual type of basically everyone except for him, Burgess Meredith's character, being anti-intellectual and treating anyone who can, form 3 or 4 words together,
right,
as being a freak or a weirdo or someone to completely, totally ignore.
Right.
In a social situation.
Now he talks about a Charles Dickens book, and this story is almost Dickensian when you think about it, because it's about a hapless boob in Bemis and the social commentary of the H-bomb going off, destroying everything. Now you have a world full of people who don't read, and those are the kinds of people who make decisions for all of us to destroy us all with bombs.
Yeah.
If more people read, they'd spend less time trying to blow each other up, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't read fiction. I read nonfiction mainly.
Right.
But the reason I do that is because you can read, for example, 3 books on one person and get a different
3
opinion
different
of that
points
person.
Of view.
Yeah, exactly. And you can it's like a free psychology lesson, because you can see that person, like the author's different motivations behind each characterization, I guess is the best way to put it.
Right.
Of each person that they're writing, the same person they're writing about.
And the whole thing is irony. It's the bigger irony toward the end of it is that Bemis would rather live in a world of insufferable jerks than without them. And I have to wonder, there had to have been other survivors, right?
Perhaps, but I mean, that bank vault was only so big.
Well, I think maybe other people might have been in bank vaults.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there might have been other. I mean, there very well, very very well could have been other survivors of that. The H-bomb.
Yeah, it was an H-bomb.
H-bomb explosion. But I mean, basically, without his glasses, he can't see jack, because if you look at his glasses, they're very, very thick.
Yeah, he has like Coke bottle glasses.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he can't see anything.
And, well, today you can get LASIK eye surgery to correct that. I know a couple of people who had very thick glasses, and now they don't need them at all.
But with an H-bomb and everything blown up, he can't do that.
No, he couldn't. You couldn't do that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to do that.
He's royally screwed.
Kind of. I don't know. There is a TV show that's running on Fox. It's a comedy. It's called The Last Man on Earth, and it stars Will Forte, Kristen Shaw, Mary Steenburgen, a couple of people. I do watch the show because it's about a small little group of people. It's not that great, unfortunately, because I feel like they're not taking their situation too seriously. It's 3 years after some kind of apocalypse has occurred, but it wasn't a bomb, because I don't know. If you look at the set decoration and the mat work in this episode, it's brilliant. They did a really wonderful job with a very limited budget that you had on television back then. They gave it a really good destructive quality. Now, for this TV show that's on Fox, it was apparently like some kind of virus that wiped everybody out, except for a very small few, kind of like, I guess, The Stand or something, if you want to compare it. But,
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, I don't really watch that show. It's kind of apocalyptic as well, right?
Exactly.
So this is a situation where he's not only alone, but he's surrounded by just unrelenting destruction everywhere he looks. Except books, they tend to survive. So when he finds the library and he sees that, he's very happy, and it's for a moment there's hope, because you think, well, at least he'll have plenty of books to read.
Yeah.
We get a mid-episode monologue from Serling. This is one of those very, very few times, I think only twice or maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the run did Rod Serling come into the episode and offer a little bit of, ironic comment on the situation. Now, Time Enough at Last was produced for the radio production of Twilight Zone, starring Tim Kazurinsky. Tim Kazurinsky appears a few times on the radio drama. He's best known for being a member of Saturday Night Live during the Dick Ebersol years, I believe 82 through 85. Very talented, very funny actor and comedian. And I have a clip here that I'll play.
Day 2, as far as I can tell, the city is without life. After sleeping through the night in an abandoned furniture store, I awoke and went in search of food. The markets in the area are fully stocked. The canned goods appear to be undamaged. Peaches. Always did like peaches. Good meal. Very good. Soup, beef stew, vegetables, and dessert. A well-rounded menu, if I do say so. Something from each of the food groups. Well, almost. That leaves approximately 900 cans in this market alone. At least I won't starve to death. It'll last for a few years. All the food one man can eat. And then some. Have to remember to carry a can opener. Now what? Go down the street to the Bijou Theater? See what's planned? Well, of course, they're dark today, no electricity. How about an after-dinner cigar? What a splendid idea. Is that a tobacco shop across the street?
So, any final thoughts about this episode, Denny?
I thought it was quietly brilliant is the best way to put it, because there is quite a bit of social commentary, but it's not there until you think about it after you go to bed. You know what I mean? Thinking about it at about 3 o'clock in the morning when you can't go to sleep.
Right.
There's a lot of social commentary that you really will not get until later, I guess is the best way to put it.
That about wraps it up. This has been that Twilighty show about that zone. Hey, I got the title right, and I want to thank my guests for this episode. The incomparable, the venerable, the socialist nightmare, Denny Spangler. Next time, I will be discussing the episodes Perchance to Dream and Judgment Night with my good buddy Colin Hall on that Twilighty show about that zone. Until then, thanks for tuning in, and always remember to pack an extra pair of eyeglasses for the apocalypse. Good night.
Good night.